Chapter 1. The Nebula's Call. The alarms blared through the corridors of the starship Orion as Captain Aria Starborne gripped the helm, her knuckles turning white. The viewport filled with the brilliant hues of the Zephyr Nebula, its swirling gases masking the danger that lurked within. "Captain, the alien vessels are closing in!" shouted Lieutenant Zax, his eyes fixed on the radar display. Aria gritted her teeth. "Evasive maneuvers now!" The Orion banked hard to the left, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts that seared past the ship's hull. The unknown alien force had ambushed them at the edge of the nebula, their sleek obsidian ships emerging from the cosmic clouds like predators stalking their prey. "Shields at 30% and falling!" reported Ensign Mira from the engineering station. Aria's mind raced as she considered their options. The Orion was outgunned and outnumbered. She had to get her crew to safety, but the unrelenting attack left little room for escape. "Captain, I'm detecting a gravitational anomaly within the nebula," Zax said, his voice laced with uncertainty. "It's pulling us in." Aria's eyes widened as she saw the swirling vortex on the view screen, its immense power tugging at the Orion like an invisible hand. She realized that the anomaly might be their only chance of survival. "All power to engines," Aria commanded. "We're going in." The crew exchanged apprehensive glances, but they trusted their captain's judgment. The Orion surged forward, plunging into the heart of the nebula. The alien ships pursued, their weapons firing relentlessly. As they entered the anomaly's grasp, the starship shuddered violently. Consoles sparked and the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Aria held onto the helm, fighting to maintain control as the ship was pulled deeper into the vortex. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light engulfed the Orion, and the ship lurched forward with incredible speed. Aria felt her stomach drop as they were hurled through a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes, the laws of physics seeming to bend and twist around them. And then, silence. The Orion emerged from the anomaly, battered but intact. The alien ships were nowhere to be seen. Aria let out a sigh of relief, but her respite was short-lived. "Captain, we've lost all navigational bearings," Zax reported, his voice trembling. "We're in uncharted space." Aria leaned back in her chair, the weight of their situation sinking in. They were stranded, far from any known star system, with a damaged ship and limited resources. As she pondered their next move, a faint signal caught her attention. It emanated from a nearby planet, its surface shrouded in a thick green mist. "There's something down there," Aria muttered, a mix of curiosity and apprehension washing over her. "Something ancient and powerful." She stood up, her eyes fixed on the view screen. "Prepare a landing party. We need to investigate." Little did Aria know that her decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of her life and the fate of the entire galaxy. The Chronicles of Celestial Explorations had begun, and Aria Starborne was about to embark on the most extraordinary adventure of her life. Chapter 2. The Quest Begins. The Orion descended through the planet's misty atmosphere, its landing gear extending as it touched down on the rocky surface. Aria Starborne stepped out of the airlock, her boots crunching against the alien terrain. Behind her, Zax and Mira followed, their eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. The planet was unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering spires of twisted metal rose from the ground, their surfaces etched with intricate glyphs and symbols. The air was thick with the scent of ancient technology and forgotten secrets. "What is this place?" Mira whispered, her voice barely audible over the eerie hum that seemed to emanate from the ruins. Aria shook her head, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." As they ventured deeper into the ruins, the hum grew louder, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath their feet. Aria's intuition guided her forward, drawn to an unseen force that seemed to beckon her. And then they saw it. In the center of a vast courtyard, an ancient alien artifact hovered in midair, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. It was a sphere, no larger than a person's head, covered in the same glyphs and symbols that adorned the ruins. Aria approached the artifact, her hand outstretched. As her fingers brushed against its surface, a jolt of energy surged through her body, and a voice echoed in her mind. "Seeker of the stars, you have come at last." Aria stumbled back, her eyes wide with shock. "Did you hear that?" Zax and Mira exchanged confused glances. "Hear what, Captain?" Aria realized that the voice had spoken directly to her, a telepathic message meant for her alone. She steadied herself and reached out to the artifact once more. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am the Keeper of Knowledge, the Guardian of the Zephyr Nebula," the voice replied, "and you, Aria Starborne, are the Chosen One." Aria's mind raced with questions. Chosen for what? To prevent the coming darkness, the cataclysm that threatens to consume the galaxy. Images flashed through Aria's mind, stars dying, planets crumbling, and civilizations turning to dust. She gasped, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the impending doom. "How can I stop it?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "You must gather the scattered pieces of the celestial conduit, the only power capable of holding back the darkness," the voice explained. "But you cannot do it alone." As if on cue, a figure emerged from the shadows of the ruins. It was a tall, slender being, with luminescent eyes and skin that shimmered like starlight. Aria instinctively reached for her blaster, but the being raised its hands in a gesture of peace. "I am Xion, the last of my kind," the alien said, its voice melodic and soothing. "I have waited centuries for your arrival, Aria Starborne." Aria lowered her weapon, a mix of curiosity and caution swirling within her. "You know my name?" Xion nodded. "The artifact has shown me your coming. Together, we must embark on a quest to gather the pieces of the celestial conduit, scattered across the stars." Aria glanced back at her crewmates, their faces etched with a mix of awe and uncertainty. She knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and challenges, but the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. With a deep breath, Aria turned to Xion. "Where do we begin?" As Xion began to explain the first steps of their journey, Aria felt a sense of purpose wash over her. She had always been an explorer, driven by the thirst for discovery and adventure. But now she realized that her destiny was intertwined with the fate of countless worlds. The Chronicles of Celestial Explorations had taken a new turn, and Aria Starborne was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 3: The Galactic Trials. Aria Starborne and her newfound ally, Xion, stood on the bridge of the Orion, their eyes fixed on the holographic star map that hovered before them. The map was a tapestry of shimmering lights, each representing a distant world or star system. "The pieces of the celestial conduit are scattered across the galaxy," Xion explained, pointing to 3 glowing markers on the map. "We must retrieve them before the darkness consumes everything." Aria nodded, her determination unwavering. "Where do we start?" Xion zoomed in on the first marker, revealing a heavily fortified space station orbiting a gas giant. The Nexus Station. It's a hub for intergalactic trade and home to some of the most dangerous criminals in the sector. "And let me guess," Aria said, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "One of the conduit pieces is hidden there?" Xion confirmed with a nod. "Retrieving it will not be easy. The station is heavily guarded, and the piece is likely in the possession of a powerful crime lord." Aria turned to her crew, who had gathered around the star map. "Zax, Mira, prepare the Orion for departure. We have a space station to infiltrate." As the Orion set course for the Nexus station, Aria retreated to her quarters, her mind swirling with thoughts of the challenges ahead. She stared at the small metallic box that sat on her desk, a reminder of her own troubled past. With a heavy sigh, Aria opened the box, revealing a tattered photograph of a young woman with fiery red hair and a mischievous grin. It was Raven Darkstar, Aria's former partner and closest friend. Memories flooded back, the daring heists, the narrow escapes, and the unbreakable bond they had shared. But that was before the betrayal, before Raven had abandoned Aria and left her to face the consequences of their actions alone. Aria had spent years trying to put her past behind her, burying herself in her duties as a starship captain. But now, as she embarked on this crucial mission, she couldn't help but wonder if her past would come back to haunt her. A knock at the door jolted Aria from her thoughts. "Come in." Zion entered, his luminescent eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right, Captain?" Aria quickly closed the box and turned to face him. "I'm fine, just lost in thought." Zion sensed there was more to it, but chose not to pry. "We're approaching the Nexus station. It's time." Aria took a deep breath, pushing her personal turmoil aside. She had a mission to focus on, a galaxy to save. As they entered the Nexus station, disguised as traitors, Aria and Zion navigated the crowded corridors, their senses on high alert. The station was a labyrinth of neon lights and shady characters, each one a potential threat. They made their way to the upper levels, where the crime lord's stronghold was located. Aria's instincts screamed danger, but she pressed forward, determined to retrieve the conduit piece. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the station. Their cover had been blown. "Halt! Intruders detected in Sector 7!" a robotic voice announced over the intercom. Aria and Zion exchanged a glance, their hands reaching for their weapons. They had come too far to turn back now. As heavily armed guards swarmed the corridor, Aria and Zion prepared for the fight of their lives. The galactic trials had begun, and failure was not an option. With a battle cry, Aria charged forward, her blaster firing, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and she would stop at nothing to secure the celestial conduit. Chapter 4. Shadows of Betrayal. The desolate moon's surface stretched out before Aria and Zion, a landscape of jagged rocks and eerie shadows. They had tracked the final piece of the celestial conduit to this forsaken place, guided by the whispers of ancient star charts. As they approached the coordinates, a sense of unease settled over Aria. Something felt off, like an invisible presence watching their every move. "Stay alert," she warned Zion, her hand resting on the hilt of her blaster. "I have a bad feeling about this." Zion nodded, his own senses heightened. They pressed forward, their footsteps echoing in the lifeless expanse. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the silence. "Well, well, well, look who decided to show up." Aria froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that voice, a voice that had once brought comfort and laughter, but now only carried the sting of betrayal. From the shadows emerged a figure clad in black, a hood obscuring their features. But Aria didn't need to see their face to know who it was. "Raven," she breathed, her voice a mix of disbelief and anger. Raven Darkstar lowered her hood, revealing the face that had haunted Aria's dreams for years. Her once vibrant green eyes now glinted with a cold, calculating edge. "Long time no see, partner," Raven drawled, a smirk playing on her lips. "I must say, I'm impressed. I didn't think you had it in you to come this far." Aria's grip tightened on her blaster. "What are you doing here, Raven?" Raven's smirk widened. "The same thing as you, of course. Seeking the final piece of the conduit. But unlike you, I have no intention of using it to save the galaxy." Realization dawned on Aria. "You're working with the alien force, the ones who attacked us in the Zephyr Nebula." Raven clapped her hands, a mocking gesture. Bravo, Aria. You always were the smart one. Yes, I've aligned myself with the true power in this galaxy, and once I have the conduit, I'll be unstoppable. Aria shook her head, disbelief and betrayal warring within her. How could you, Raven, after everything we've been through, everything we fought for? Raven's expression hardened. You left me to rot in that prison, Aria. You abandoned me when I needed you most. This is my chance for revenge and power. Aria felt a pang of guilt, but she pushed it aside. I'm sorry, Raven. I made mistakes, but I won't let you destroy the galaxy for your own selfish gain. Raven's hand moved to her own blaster. Then I guess we'll have to settle this the old-fashioned way. In a flash, Raven drew her weapon, firing at Aria. Aria dove for cover, returning fire as Zion joined the fray. The once peaceful moon became a battlefield, the sound of blaster fire and the clash of metal against metal filling the air. Aria and Raven fought with a ferocity born of years of pent-up anger and betrayal. They had once been an unstoppable team, but now they were bitter enemies, each determined to come out on top. As the battle raged on, Aria found herself face-to-face with Raven, their blasters locked in a stalemate. It doesn't have to be this way, Raven, Aria pleaded, searching for a glimmer of the friend she once knew. We can still make this right. For a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Raven's face, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, hard resolve. No, Aria, this is the only way. With a swift move, Raven disarmed Aria, sending her blaster skittering across the ground. She aimed her own weapon at Aria's heart, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. Goodbye, old friend. As Raven's finger tightened on the trigger, Aria closed her eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But the shot never came. Instead, a blinding light filled the air, and a voice echoed in Aria's mind. Choose wisely, Aria Starborne. The fate of the galaxy rests in your hands. Aria opened her eyes to find herself standing alone, Raven and Zion nowhere to be seen. Before her, the final piece of the celestial conduit hovered, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. Aria reached out, her fingers closing around the artifact. As its power surged through her, she knew that the true test was yet to come. The shadows of betrayal had been confronted, but the fate of the stars still hung in the balance. Aria Starborne had a choice to make, and the consequences would echo across the cosmos. Chapter 5. The Celestial Convergence. Aria Starborne stood on the bridge of the Orion, the reassembled celestial conduit pulsing with energy in her hands. The artifact hummed with ancient power, its surface etched with glyphs that danced with an ethereal light. It's time, Zion said, his voice filled with a mix of awe and trepidation. The cosmic catastrophe is almost upon us. Aria nodded, her eyes fixated on the conduit. How do we stop it? Zion placed a hand on the artifact, and a holographic projection sprung to life before them. It depicted two massive fleets of ships, one bathed in a radiant golden light, the other cloaked in a malevolent crimson hue. The conduit has shown me the truth, Zion explained. The impending disaster is the result of an ancient war between two powerful alien races, the Luminar and the Shadowar. They have been locked in a cycle of destruction for eons, their battles tearing the fabric of space-time itself. Aria's brow furrowed. And the conduit? What role does it play? The conduit is a sentient being, created by a long-forgotten civilization to bring balance to the universe. It is known as the Celestial Conduit, the only force capable of ending the war and preventing the annihilation of countless worlds. Aria felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. How do we use its power? Zion's expression grew solemn. You must navigate a diplomatic mission, Aria. Bring the Luminar and the Shadowar together, convince them to set aside their differences, and forge a lasting peace. Only then can the conduit's true potential be unleashed. Aria took a deep breath, her mind racing with the enormity of the task before her. She had faced many challenges in her life, but nothing quite like this. "Set a course for the Luminar homeworld," she commanded, her voice steady with determination. "We have a war to end." As the Orion traversed the galaxy, Aria pored over ancient texts and star charts, seeking any information that could aid in her mission. She studied the histories of the Luminar and the Shadowar, trying to understand the root of their conflict. Days turned into weeks as Aria negotiated with the leaders of both races, her words a delicate dance of diplomacy and persuasion. She spoke of the devastation their war had wrought, the lives lost, and the worlds shattered. At first, the Luminar and the Shadowar were resistant, their hatred for each other too deeply ingrained. But as Aria shared the visions the conduit had shown her, the beauty of a universe at peace, the potential for growth and prosperity, something began to shift. Slowly, tentatively, the leaders of the two races began to listen, to consider the possibility of a different path. Aria's words, imbued with the wisdom of the conduit, struck a chord within their hearts. And then, in a moment that would be remembered for generations, the Luminar and the Shadowar agreed to a truce. They set aside their weapons and came together, united in their desire to protect the galaxy they called home. As the leaders clasped hands, a brilliant light emanated from the celestial conduit, bathing the assembly in a warm, soothing glow. Aria felt the conduit's consciousness brushing against her own, a gentle whisper of gratitude and approval. But even as the Luminar and the Shadowar celebrated their newfound peace, Aria sensed a growing unease within the conduit. The sentient artifact showed her a vision of a malevolent entity lurking in the depths of space, an ancient evil that threatened to unravel the delicate balance they had achieved. Aria knew that the true test was yet to come. The celestial convergence had brought the races together, but the fight for the fate of the galaxy was far from over. As she gazed out at the stars, Aria steeled herself for the final battle that loomed on the horizon. She had come so far, grown from a lone explorer to a leader and a symbol of hope. And she would stop at nothing to protect the universe she called home. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, and Aria Starborne was ready to face her destiny head-on. Chapter 6. The Fate of the Stars. The void of space trembled as the malevolent entity emerged from the depths of the cosmos, its form a twisted mass of darkness and chaos. It was an ancient evil, a being of pure destruction that sought to unravel the very fabric of existence. Aria Starborne stood at the helm of the Orion, the united fleets of the Luminar and the Shadowar at her back. The celestial conduit pulsed with power in her hands, its light a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. "This is it," Aria whispered, her voice echoing through the bridge. "The final battle for the fate of the galaxy." Zion placed a hand on her shoulder, his presence a comforting anchor in the face of the impending chaos. "We stand with you, Aria, until the very end." Aria nodded, her eyes fixed on the view screen as the entity drew closer. She could feel the conduit's energy surging through her, a symphony of ancient power and untold potential. The battle began in a blaze of light and fire, the united fleets engaging the entity and its legions of shadow creatures. Ships danced through the void, their weapons blazing as they fought to push back the darkness. At the heart of the conflict, Aria wielded the celestial conduit like a conductor, its power flowing through her and into the allied ships. The conduit's light strengthened their shields, guided their aim, and filled their hearts with the courage to face the impossible odds. But the entity was strong, its power fueled by eons of hatred and destruction. It lashed out with tendrils of pure entropy, ripping ships apart and consuming the very light itself. As the battle raged on, Aria realized that the conduit alone would not be enough to defeat the entity. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind to the sentient artifact, seeking guidance and wisdom. "What must I do?" she asked, her voice a desperate plea. "How can we stop this destruction?" The conduit's consciousness enveloped her, a warm embrace of ancient knowledge and understanding. It showed her the truth, the only path to victory. Aria's eyes snapped open, a newfound resolve burning within her. She knew what had to be done, the sacrifice that was required. With a heavy heart, she turned to Zion and the crew of the Orion. "I must go," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "The conduit has shown me the way." Zion's eyes widened, understanding dawning on his face. "Aria, no, there must be another way." Aria shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. "This is the only way, Zion. The only way to save everything we hold dear." She stepped forward, embracing her friend and ally one last time. "Take care of them, Zion. Lead them to a brighter future." With a final nod, Aria turned and strode toward the airlock, the celestial conduit clutched tightly in her hands. As she ejected herself into the void, Aria felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had come so far, grown from a lone explorer to a leader and a symbol of hope. And now she would make the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the survival of all she held dear. Aria channeled the full power of the conduit, her body becoming a conduit for its ancient energy. She rocketed toward the heart of the entity, a brilliant star amidst the darkness. As she collided with the entity, the conduit erupted in a supernova of pure light, its power tearing through the darkness like a cleansing flame. The entity screamed, its form dissipating as the conduit's energy consumed it, banishing it back to the depths from whence it came. The galaxy trembled as the battle reached its climax, the united fleets watching in awe as Aria Starborne, the savior of the stars, vanquished the ancient evil in a blaze of self-sacrifice. In the aftermath, as the allied ships regrouped and tended to their wounds, Zion stood on the bridge of the Orion, his eyes fixed on the spot where Aria had disappeared. He could still feel her presence, a lingering warmth that filled his heart with hope and purpose. "Farewell, my friend," he whispered, a single tear rolling down his cheek. "Your sacrifice will never be forgotten." As the united fleet set out to rebuild and heal, Aria's legacy lived on. Her story became legend, passed down from generation to generation, the tale of a brave explorer who had risen to become the savior of the galaxy, the one who had given everything to ensure the survival of all sentient beings. And though Aria Starborne was gone, her spirit endured, a guiding light that would forever shine brightly in the hearts of those she had touched. The fate of the stars had been decided, and the galaxy would forever remember the name of the one who had saved them all.